We are glad to present to you our new Motion Pro course. In this course, we'll analyze the process of creating an animated video, from organizing the process and project to creating complete complex scenes. And we'll do everything in order to bring your skills to the next level. Of course, senior motion designers need to have a lot of animation experience. But also, they should thoroughly master design tools, understand every detail of the workflow, know how to improve it, speed it up, and also be able to come up with new solutions to the issues that no one has faced yet. To sum up, you need to develop problem-solving skills and do research and development to achieve this level. In this lesson, we'll cover a rather boring, but at the same time, a very important part of the work, which is a correct organization of a project. You'll take a look at the principles and rules that we follow. They will help you to avoid turning your project into chaos in the future, and save your time on searching for the needed components. We will do everything to make our project clear for colleagues so that we aren't afraid to open it over time. We'll also share with you the techniques and additional tools we use to optimize our workflow and automate a lot of routine. In this lesson, we are going to prepare and import all the materials. After that, in the second one, we'll assemble the first animatic in which we'll define the preliminary timing of our scenes. So let's begin. We have a ready-made script, final illustrations, and sound. You can find files in the project archive. There will be two sets of them. The first one is clean. These are the original files that we will adapt for work. The second set of files is already prepared for work. So you may use it if you cannot or do not want to prepare it. Before you start animating a project, you should understand how effectively you are managing such projects, how well your structure is organized. This is especially important if you are a freelancer or want to become a freelancer. And if you work in a studio, you shouldn't rely on managers. Your personal work organization will speak of your professional maturity. It's good practice to assign a unique identifier to each project. If you are not using a number structure for your projects, I highly recommend that you try this. For example, this 5-character system gives each project its own unique identifier, which is easy to track. This allows you to maintain the structure of your career so that you can better understand which direction you are moving in. We receive a lot of material by links, which is sometimes impossible to download and keep constantly updated. For project management, you can use any system like Jira, Asana, or Trello. My favorite for now is Notion. It allows me to save the history of my projects, contacts, track progress, and save a lot of additional material from the network. All completed or canceled works are archived so that they won't get lost in history. All this provides me a general idea of the progress and helps me to analyze my downloaded materials in order to ensure whether nothing is forgotten or missed. If you don't take a note of something, there is a pretty high risk that it will be quickly forgotten and lost. So this practice will come in handy not only for leads and seniors, but for all employees, developing their productivity. If you are not yet using all of these, the first task for you will be to think about your preparation workflow. How randomly are your materials stored? Can you access them quickly enough? And if you need to return to the material in a year, how quickly will you be able to find it? Let's go from project management systems back to files. What to save and where to do this so that in the future you don't waste time searching for it. After all, later you'll have more important things to do. Another good practice is to work on current projects in cloud applications like Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud, or Adobe Cloud. Of course, if the corporate policy of the project allows you to use third-party storage services. This has several advantages. Projects are available anywhere and anytime. No flash drives. Sync speed is only limited by your internet speed. Additional backup. If you faced a situation when you've lost your work material for unforeseen reasons at least once in your life, you'd definitely thought about backup. This is necessary in any case. Working in one of these clouds, you ensure yourself a little against computer breakdown and do not waste time looking for a way to get your material back. And also, some of them save the history of file changes, which is very cool when you accidentally delete a project or replace it with another. Cloud storages are cool, but local backups are essential. During work, it is good practice to archive materials without deleting them for no reason. Always keep a separate repository for completed projects. Your customers will be pleased if you can return after a while to an old project with all the material and not forcing everything to be done from scratch. Let's move on to folders. As a professional, you should not only know your own part of the work, but also understand the general process of project development, how all the parts are connected together. It will help you with personal projects too. The folder structure of one animator may dramatically differ from the one of another animator. The same is for studios. There are two most popular approaches to forming the structure: a simpler option and a more complex one. The simpler one includes an abbreviated structure for small projects. For example, this. The Assets folder contains illustrations, videos, fonts, that is, everything needed in work. Sometimes some folders are placed in the root of the project, but that's up to you. All intermediate and final animations are rendered in export. The Projects folder contains all working project files. These can be the Illustrator files when you need to draw something, the After Effects files, and the Cinema 4D files when you need to model and animate something in 3D. Sometimes it is important for Cinema 4D to store working materials in the place where the project is stored, so some files can move between this folder and Assets. Heavy compositions are rendered into video files in a proxy folder. A lot of software for working with video have proxy functions. They allow you to quickly switch between a working composition and a video file. This greatly speeds up work on large and complex projects. We will definitely need this folder for the course. The Share folder is the last frequently used one. Into this folder, you can move files that will be shared with colleagues and clients. Since I usually store current non-supermassive projects for 6 months in one of the cloud storages, I share links to download files from here. This is the structure that we will use in the course. Try to use it when doing each lesson, and later you will find out in what cases it can come in handy. A complex structure can have hundreds of variations. The main improvement is adding numerals. It keeps folders in order in similar projects. By doing this, you free the thought processes. You do not need to look for the necessary folder from time to time with your eyes. Over time, you will mechanically open what you need at a particular moment. This is the most interesting option. Here, the folder structure is deeper and depends on the production stages. It all starts with searching for references and collecting illustrations with animations that will help us imagine how the project might look. Then you need to collect working materials like fonts, corporate identity, and so on. Next, you need to collect conceptual shots that will form the basis of a new project, from which you can build a story, animatic, and make preliminary video editing. After that, you move on to illustrations, animation, add sound design, and finally send it to your client. Try to find your optimal structure based on your current experience. Don't be afraid to experiment. We want to tell you not only about the advanced level of work, but also go further. The deeper and more thoroughly we go into the field, the more often the need for programming arises. Large studios very often develop their own automation tools. A very simple example of such automation is a script to recreate the required folder structure written in Python 3. We will not go deep into its work as this is a completely different topic. If you have basic knowledge of programming, the instructions will be very simple for you. Such file can be run through the terminal with several parameters. The first is the name of the structure template. The second parameter is the path where you want to create this folder structure. In this example, def is a simple folder structure that we will use in the course. And advance is a large structure. This will help unify your projects and make the organization process cross-platform. If you want to use your own folder structure, you can find the list of folders here in the file code. Subfolders are written in square brackets. To add a folder, just type in a comma and a name. If there should be others in the folder, then place the word in square brackets. The first name will be the root of the folder. All others will be inside of it. That's all for now with the folders. Let's move on. I recommend you save video files themselves according to a certain structure. For example, this. At the beginning, you can specify the project name to simplify the search in the system. Then, if you don't render the entire video, but a specific scene, you need to enter the abbreviated frame number, the scene number, or any other short description, from which it will be clear what the video is about. And the number at the end is the iteration of a particular video. Don't use final. Keep it neat, use only increments, only hardcore. To conclude, you should remember that there may not be enough space in the cloud storage for very massive projects, which can collectively occupy from hundreds of gigabytes to terabytes, unless you're ready to buy more space, of course. Therefore, the structure and storage location can vary greatly from project to project. As I've said earlier, the main thing is to have the structure in every project. Now let's move on to preparing illustrations. The great artist Renaud Lavency drew a set of 6 frames in Photoshop. This is called Frames, and contains everything we need to work on the scenes. And here are additionally separate illustrations of various objects called separate illustrations. We'll work with all this material on the course, and you'll be able to create your own animations following our lessons. What's more, we'll add in the course a lot of material that wasn't included in the final work, but you can use it to create incredible new animations. Let's take a look at the material in this lesson. Photoshop files are made with a very large margin of size. Scene illustrations are up to 10K pixels wide, which is pretty cool. We can see even the smallest details of the illustrations. Such detail will allow us to use this material to work with resolutions from Full HD up to 8K. We'll be able to enlarge the frame without losing the quality of the bitmap image. However, it'll be hard to import and process such large illustrations in After Effects on an average computer. We've created our promo video in 4K resolution. However, in order not to overload your computer, we will use Full HD frame size for educational purposes. In animation, we will both reduce and enlarge the illustrations themselves. So it is important for us to have a small margin of quality so that we do not face issues with scaling elements and can use them in different contexts and tasks. So first, I'll make copies of the original illustrations. Always try to keep the originals so that we can go back and redo something anytime. Let's copy all the scene illustrations and paste them into a new Frames folder, which is situated in the Assets folder. And copy simple illustrations and paste them into the Objects folder. Excellent. Next, let's scale them down. We can leave the illustrations of the elements as they are. They are all 3000 by 3000 pixels, which is enough to show them as large as possible in the frame. And let's scale down the illustrations of the scenes by 3 times. To do this, we will use the Image Size panel in Photoshop. If you can't use Photoshop, you may use already prepared Photoshop files to the project archive, in the Prepared folder. Let's make sure that the width and height values are connected, and the dimensions are in pixels. Then in any field of width and height, divide the value by 3. This will automatically decrease the values by 3 times. An error has appeared, suggesting that one of the values is not an integer. And we can do nothing with fractional numbers. Let's just agree with it and Photoshop will round it to a whole. Okay, let's apply the settings. I like the picture. You'd better check it at the scale values like 100%, 50%, and 25%. This will keep the picture as clear as possible. In the first frame, we do not need all the illustrations. So I'll hide some of them because when assembling all the animations together, we'll use this frame as a reference of the optimal arrangement of all elements. We have all small illustrations in separate files, so we won't cut out anything additionally from the frame. You can save this document with a new name by simply adding 1 at the end. Let's do the same with all the other illustrations. In the second frame, a lot of elements differ from those used in the first frame. However, since we'll be rebuilding almost everything from scratch with the After Effects tools, we will not save all of them separately. Look only at the character and the vase with the flower on the bottom left. We're planning to reduce the entire illustration by 3 times in order to import it into After Effects. The character will become too small to work with. Therefore, you can save it as a separate project with the original resolution. First, let's copy the project and add char to the name. After that, I'll turn off all unnecessary layers. Keep in mind that these projects have a curves adjustment layer that slightly adjusts the colors in the illustration. This is a small tip on how to avoid adjusting all the colors in the illustration separately. During import into After Effects, it will also be imported, and we'll be able to adjust it. For now, it is important to understand that we will not be working with the final colors most of the time, but we'll work with a bit lighter ones. If we render separate animations, we'll need to add another adjustment layer to them in order to match the correct palette of colors. The main thing is to remember about these layers and check whether they are in place. Let's leave only 2 layers, Bob and Shadow, for convenience. I'll further reduce the scope of this file through the Canvas Size panel by 3 times as well. The main thing is that the layers don't go beyond this frame. Now let's move on to the flower. Add plant to the name of the new file. We won't need it for animation, but we need to save it as a reference for modeling and animation in Cinema 4D, as well as to get the textures of the leaves. Here I'll leave the plant layer and the adjustment layer. Now you can reduce the original document by 3 times as well as the first one. In order not to repeat yourself, you can even create a simple action that records a sequence of actions to reduce the document. Each time you launch an action, it will repeat all recorded actions, which greatly saves time on the routine. Let's just repeat all the steps after the start of the recording. And when you're done, turn off the recording. Save the file with 1. Great. Other illustrations do not need to be cut out, so you can simply reduce them and save them as copies. The last thing you should note is the masks in Photoshop. Let's open the 4th frame. Masks are one of those things that don't convert from Photoshop to After Effects. Instead of regular layers with a mask, we'll just have a Photoshop layer with no ability to edit the mask in After Effects. But in general, this is not a problem. We can always open a Photoshop project, make changes, resave the project, and these changes will be displayed in After Effects. The situation is worse with masks on folders. As in this frame, inside the Frank's Beginning folder, with the Group 45 and Group 45 copy folders, these folders are converted to After Effects compositions, and since the masks are not converted, they will simply be removed, and all content won't be cropped by the mask. We can fix this only by drawing the mask in After Effects ourselves, but we will not need the elements of this illustration. We will create this glass from scratch using the After Effects tools. Therefore, these groups can be simply combined into a smart object. If necessary, these smart objects can be exposed later as separate projects. Let's resave this file. The same can be done in the 5th frame. There are even more such folders with masks. But most of the illustrations are repeated there, and in the near future we won't need this illustration. So we simply will not import it. We are done with the preparation. Now let's move on to importing into After Effects. When any project has a structure and organization, this already suggests that an animator who works on it has experience in the field. The animator communicates with other colleagues, and productivity is important to him. It is not so important what this structure is like. Each animator or studio can have its own rules of organization. The main thing is that this structure is there, and it is intuitive to understand it. As with the system folder templates, After Effects also has a simple template system. It consists of 3 steps. The first one is to create the required folder structure in an empty project. The second step is to save such an empty file anywhere on your computer. And finally, the third step, you need to go into the After Effects settings, New Project, and specify this saved file. Further, with each opening, the program won't open a completely empty project, but it will open a saved one with a set of base folders. In addition to the Assets folder, which will store illustrations, the Audio folder for audio tracks can be placed separately in the root, since the assets will be heavily overloaded anyway. Let's immediately add the music file to it, from the project archive, Motion Pro MX. The Frames folder will contain all the working compositions of different frames. These will be some of the main folders. We will create others during the work on the project. The bottom dash before the name is not easy. After Effects sorts all items alphabetically by default. If we add different materials to the project, our structure will be broken. The folders will get mixed up, the entropy will increase. And to be honest, this is usually annoying. Therefore, the second thing you can do after creating the main folder is to add a lower dash before the name of the priority folder and tracks. This will keep folders with this sign always on top. Whatever new items are added, they will always be below. Less entropy and more peace of mind. We have a lot of illustrations. When importing Photoshop files, dozens of new compositions will appear in the project, so you can use the Assets folder for them. For illustrations, let's create two folders, Frames and Objects in the Assets folder. There are a number of good and bad nuances to importing Photoshop files. If basic effects are added to the Photoshop project, for example, layer styles, they will be successfully imported, and we can adjust them already in After Effects itself. However, this doesn't work for all of them and not always. Some effects may not be converted. Importing and converting often changes the way the illustrations were originally designed. Therefore, it is important for us to import footages that will look exactly as the illustrator intended. So I import all the illustrations of the elements into each of the folders. First as footages by pressing Ctrl-I and selecting footage at the bottom of the list. Then as the footages of the scene. Done. After that, import the files as compositions again so that all Photoshop layers are added to the project as layers in After Effects. But take your time. After importing files in this way, the size of the compositions will be the same as in the file itself. But the frame rate and the duration of the compositions will be the same as you set in the last created compositions. And according to our technical requirements, the frame rate should be 24 frames per second. Otherwise, you will have to either manually adjust the frame rate for dozens of compositions or use specialized scripts. But even if you accidentally import it incorrectly, don't worry. We have a lot of new scripts prepared for you, including a script to adjust the frame rate of any number of compositions. For now, let's just create a temporary composition in which we set the frame rate to 24 and the duration to 15 seconds. This is enough for most of our tasks. Great. We've got the settings for import. After that, the composition can be simply deleted. Now we can go back to importing illustrations. Let's select all illustrations of the scenes, except for the third and the fifth, as we do not need them yet. In the import window, do not forget to select not just the composition mode, but composition retain layer sizes, so that all layers have their own boundaries. Objects are imported quickly, but frames may take longer due to the large number of layers. If you take a look at the parameters of the compositions, you'll see that the frame rate and duration are exactly as we need. Now we have a fairly large number of files and compositions. We will use the footages as precise references, from which we will recreate the illustrations with the After Effects tools. And we'll partially use the converted scene frames as material for animation. At this stage, we're going to finish the lesson. We've covered good practices in organizing and managing projects. You should have a common vision for your projects. Think about a structure that would make it easier for you to work with the material. I recommend you follow a file naming structure to reduce search time. All of these will help you focus better on tasks, because every little unnecessary action or a moment that makes you think, in total, can take up much more time and energy than you can even imagine. We've also prepared illustrations from Photoshop. We've analyzed the advantages and disadvantages of such conversion, and solved a lot of minor issues that could take a lot of time in the future. In the next lesson, we'll start creating an animatic and take a look at additional scripts that help us in our work. Thanks and good luck.